Yo, what is up, everybody? I am Zach. Thank you for being here, my expanded family. If you are new to this channel, please like, subscribe, and hit the little bell notification as we do post a lot of content on this channel, so you will want to be notified when that stuff goes live. Uh, Aaron, I guess, is running late or something. I don't really know. Not really important, anyways. I have kind of. Oh, actually, he just popped in right now. I actually have kind of a topic that we can go into tonight. That's kind of based off of what Aaron had just posted that in his state that the governor had just issued an ordinance, or which is we should be very clear that this is a request that everyone wears a mask, and so I definitely wanted to talk about that. But then also basically talking about how to actually utilize whatever situation that you're in to just kind of navigate the way that is most effectively for you, which directly kind of carries over into that thing. So first of all, though, hi Jacob, hi Sam, hi Lucinda, hi Willow. Very good to see all of you. Jacob, thank you for being on Jen's show earlier today. Your new flutes are absolutely wonderful. So I appreciate you being here to do that. Hey Joseph, what is up, my friend? Aaron, how are you doing, man?
I am doing pretty good. A little flustered, just tons of hiccups. I mean, I don't usually point to or consider retrograde all that often. Doesn't seem to affect my world a whole lot, but it's been one hell of a month. So,
Sure. I find that the more that we start paying attention to astrology, the more that we actually kind of start noticing how the effects might be carryovers. And when we're
mm,
not really paying attention to astrology, it's easy just to kind of like, oh, that's just how it is, or whatever the case is, like that. And since you don't have any kind of thing to connect it to, you kind of like don't notice that it's connected to something. You know what I mean?
that makes sense. So I feel like I've been aware of them before, but I haven't been. Actually, hold on. I'm also doing as a side note. I'm testing out as of today and this morning. StreamYard has now made a actually create a mobile platform for being in the show, which I am using right now. And it's way better than it was before. Because usually you have to go desktop mode, and then if you're trying to watch the screen, it's super tiny down there, and you can't see the comments. And this
Is
is
it an
actually
app?
no, it's literally just going to the mobile site. So going to streamyard.com and
Oh,
then
okay.
like present the link out. Yeah, actually, it's way better,
It's just better now. Got it.
way better. So
Yeah, I
now it's
noticed that
way
they
more
had
mobile
changed some
friendly.
things on, well, at least on the PC platform the other day. So I wonder if it was the same time. Probably was.
Yeah, so that's good actually. So great. So it makes it even easier for you guys to come on, and anybody else actually now it's way better. And that means actually great. So I don't have to use much hotspot data. I can use mobile data.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that definitely is good for sure.
So
So
the
I kind
retrograde
of
stuff.
like what I was talking about, and retrogrades kind of pull into this too, is just the idea of recognizing that one of the greatest benefits of a human and the human mind is its ability to be malleable and kind of make the best or make positives out of any situation that it's in. One way that I like to look at this, which is kind of stolen from Gary Vaynerchuk, not necessarily the ideology, but the metaphor, is that like we think of optimism versus pessimism as the glass being half full and half empty. And if you were here when I was like kind of introducing gene keys a little bit through the unity key, we were talking about how there's generally like three states to something. And while we might think that like these two are the opposites, in this case, optimism, pessimism, there's really kind of another state that is transcendent to all of those. In the case of optimism, where we have optimism and pessimism, which is like this idea of glass is half full, half empty, the kind of transcendent state to that is the person who just knows what to do with whatever the fuck is in the glass, right? So they're effectively resourceful, or you can think of this in so many different ways, like malleable, ingenuity. They're clever. You can think of this all kinds of different ways, but really, what I urge people to do in their life a lot of time in my coaching is not necessarily to be worried so much about necessarily changing their situation, but understanding how to utilize their situation to generate the outcome that they're looking for, anyways, and kind of allowing the vector towards that outcome to change the situation for them. Where it's basically the case that like it doesn't matter whether we started out with just like a single drop of water or half the glass full. What we're really trying to do is get the glass to overflowing. So it's all about like
Mm,
using the water that's already in the glass to attract more water to being in the glass functionally, because really the goal is overflowing. We have a tendency to start sharing the water from our glass when our glass is not yet overflowing because we feel like the
yeah.
income is pretty good. but really we don't actually have that available. We really only have the overflowing overage to share with other people. And if we don't take good self care practices, which is a lot of like making the best out of situations, then we don't actually have that overage to share with other people. The issue with the what we oftentimes call like the caretaker is that they are oftentimes trying to share from a glass that is not full enough to really be sharing from. I think that until the glass is overflowing, that it's not really full enough to be sharing from. I think self care and taking care of yourself is always going to be should always be prioritized against taking care of someone else because we're not actually able to really take care of them in the way that we want to if we're running on fumes, basically. So,
Mm-hmm.
with what Aaron was posting about specifically, and this will apply to a lot of you
Yeah.
in the event that there's a mandate that comes down where the state government requests that you start wearing a mask, there's a little loophole to this one. And that little loophole is that the only real reason where you need to worry about this is in the situation where someone at basically like a business is going to tell, hey, look, you can't shop here unless you got a mask on. Well, all you need to do to get around this is simply tell them that you have a medical condition that prohibits you from wearing a mask. And they actually are barred by law and by threat of lawsuit, large ones, to not even be able to ask you what your medical condition is. They cannot pursue this any farther than that. They cannot refuse you service based off of your medical condition, and they have to allow you into the store without a mask on. So you do
Mm.
not actually need to wear these masks. Even if police came up to you, you could tell them that you have a medical condition, and that medical condition can be all kinds of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the books with a doctor first and foremost. In definitely most states, some states maybe it would need to be on the books, but realize like what you're basically battling against here is kind of this little like it's it, it's a catch and release ordinance, okay? They're not going to take you to jail for not having a mask, which also means that they're not going to invest very much time into enforcing the idea that you don't have a mask. A lot of states, even their local law enforcement, the sheriffs, etc., have already openly stated in state, the governor or something has said that everybody does need to wear a mask, that they won't be enforcing that because there's better things to be putting their time towards, etc. You really don't need to worry about this with your random standard kind of beat cop, right? And
Mm.
like there's a lot of ways out of that one because you can literally tell them that like you're preparing to exercise and that's the only reason why you're outside without a mask on. And then if they're like, well, prove it, just go jogging off. You're boom, you're out of the ticket, right? So the whole point of
Mm.
this is basically recognizing that maritime law is built for people to be able to exploit it. I know this in a certain way kind of sounds ridiculous to a certain way of looking at law, but it's literally what how the system is built, all the way down to the tax codes, literally every level of it. There's basically always a way out of everything. You just need to understand what you need to leverage in order to get out of those situations. So, specifically in the mask situation, leverage the fact that you have a medical condition that prohibits you from wearing a mask. And literally, that can be as simple as, like, well, for instance, Jen, several years ago, because she wasn't getting enough oxygen, she was falling into non epileptic pseudo seizures as a byproduct of heightened levels and basically an offset ratio of CO2 to O2 inside of her brain. This can send you into a seizure. These things do restrict oxygen flow. You could technically claim that that is literally just your entire thing, even though always remember, it's completely illegal for anybody to ask you what your medical condition is. That is a private thing. You do not have to share that with them. And oftentimes, we only associate the idea of the Fifth Amendment to getting out of talking to a cop. That is not true. Basically, the Fifth Amendment is while we have a right to free speech granted by other amendments of the Constitution for the United States, we also have one that grants you the freedom to not use any kind of speech. And this, we usually use this inside of court, that basically like I'm claiming the Fifth Amendment on the grounds that I might incriminate myself. But realize you can also claim the Fifth Amendment and still be under basically the constitutional rights for you as an American citizen granted by the Constitution for the United States. To sit there and be quiet and not be subject to any type of persecution because of that. It is your right to remain silent because you have a fear of persecution. Can be because you believe that the person is going to judge you, because you believe that they are trying to overtly police some kind of society, anything like that. You are constitutionally allowed to not say shit to someone in the event that you think that that will make your life go worse in any way, shape, or form. So if they require you to talk to them beyond telling them, I have a medical condition that does not allow me to wear a mask or prohibits me from wearing a mask, you do not have to talk to them anymore beyond that. Any further conversation that they try to have with you, if you especially tell them that you are actually claiming your Fifth Amendment right to be silent about your case and you wish you would like to not talk to them anymore, please leave me alone. Any further movement with that, they are subject to potential lawsuit because they are harassing a free American citizen. They can't be doing this to you, but recognize if you do not know your rights, you functionally do not have any. So it is very functional to understand what people actually can tell you to do. The governor of the state cannot suddenly put in place a law that charges free American citizens money because they do not or do wear a mask. This is not something that can just suddenly get passed down like that. That is not the way that our legal system works. These people are completely overstepping the actual democratic process. Funny note about that. Every single one of the governors that has done this is a Democrat. They are stepping all over the democratic process by putting down these kinds of ordinances and putting these things out with basically them masquerading as being some kind of requirement. They cannot pose a requirement on a free American citizen like that. You, as a free American citizen, your name in lowercase, not representing the corporation held in your name, which is a U.S. citizen. So I'm talking about an American citizen protected by the Constitution. You cannot be harassed like that. You cannot be charged fines and such for your activities unless they are in some way, shape, or form hindering the life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness for another individual, which not wearing a mask does not fall underneath that whatsoever. There is absolutely no way they would ever win that constitutional court case unless there is extreme levels of corruption in place, which is just ridiculous. Long story short, know your rights. Be willing to be assertive with your rights and claim your rights. Otherwise, you do not actually have them. It doesn't matter whether your mom tells you that you can go across the street to play with your friends. If you refuse to go across the street and play with your friends, you do not have the freedom to go across the street and play with your friends. Even if you have been allotted all of those rights by documents created and contained and supposed to be upheld by the government of the country that you live in that grants you those freedoms. You must actually make sure that they are being recognized for you. Everybody has a camera inside of their pocket right now. You start pulling it out, start filming people, and start claiming that, like, look, you keep pushing with this. I got a lawsuit. You got a lawsuit on your hands. People back down extremely quickly from where they're basically their high horse, where they think that they can tell you what to do. It's been shown through many university studies that people that get put in any position of power, even where they're passing down the idea that I'm a greeter at a grocery store and I tell people, hey, you need to have a mask on. When people acquiesce to that request, they start to get a psychological belief of their own power, and that has a tendency to get them to corrupt those positions and make decisions that are not in line with how they would normally think. This is kind of the core psychological proof of the idea that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Even minor power corrupts minorly. So power corrupts is just the reality of the situation. So when people get the opportunity to do this, sometimes you need to assert yourself a little bit more and recognize that you are within your rights to choose to not do something like that. You do not have to do that. Much like you did not ever have to stay home, it was never a stay-at-home law. It was never a stay-at-home requirement. It was a stay-at-home request at best. Sometimes they postulated this as an order, but that's just a clever use of legalese where order doesn't really actually mean you have to do it. Okay?
Mhm.
So it's really just a request. These other
And
things are a request as well.
what one is this? As far as specific terms go, this is a mandate
I don't know
versus an
what they're
order or
trying to call it,
versus.
but at the end of the day, it's unconstitutional. So it doesn't matter.
Do you want to look at the link I sent from the governor's website? They actually break it down, so they're telling people what it's supposed to be or how it's supposed to be. It
Right,
just
which we
says all
should note
the
the stuff that they say on here is complete malarkey because the entire idea that they're even trying to push this out upon people
right.
is utter, complete, unconstitutional bullshit. So, whatever kind of legalese they use in here is really neither here nor there because the most that they can possibly do in this situation, so they're calling it a statewide mandatory face covering order.
Order. Okay.
And like I
In
said,
order.
order is a clever little wording that doesn't really mean much of anything.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
load their Department of Health website for this, but of course, despite their millions and millions of dollars in taxes that they get, having a server that actually loads quickly, no, not enough money for that. Too expensive. Very ridiculous.
That's because I think it helped people too. Because like I try to go directly to the source, right? Not just news clips. And so that's from the governor's site. And then I think at the end of it, they released, they linked the actual documents they had to, not just the breakdown of it, but even just the NLP and the writing. I mean, obviously it's all agendaed for whatever purpose. There's not be some bad hidden agenda. It's just obviously there's an agenda. Their agenda is to get people to wear masks. Therefore, the whole article is everything I say is incredibly crafted with repetitive phrases and things that are just like bombarding. It's just like
One way
Jesus,
we
man.
should know that this is complete fucking bullshit is that on the bottom of the DOH website, it says how to make a face covering, and the second one is how to make a face covering from an old t-shirt from the Surgeon General. I don't know what you guys know about virology, but an old t-shirt won't protect you from any virus on the motherfucking planet. That will never help you in the slightest. The holes inside of a t-shirt are about 100,000 times the size of a virus. If you think that that is going to stop a virus from coming into your mouth or from coming out of your mouth, you seriously need to go get your head checked because this is ridiculous. If you do any time with research with virology, you will know immediately that we're talking about like nanometers and shit is the
So
size of
break down,
viruses.
so break down their argument. So I understand what you're saying, and I agree. But then you look at what are other people hearing? What's the other argument? So read what they are saying about it, because that's what people are hearing, and it sounds reasonable on the surface, or reasonable enough, because it's talking about covering your mouth so other additional droplets and fluids that contain the virus don't get on people and things. Like I'm saying, it's like obviously it's going to sound reasonable enough. So it's nice having the contrasting perspective you're providing, but also hearing what they're saying
This only
verbatim.
sounds reasonable if you think that for some reason the virus needs like a visible amount of spit in order to be carried out of your mouth.
Right,
90% of it is going to come out as effectively a vapor that would steam anything up when you breathe, even though you never see any water. So
right.
like this is all that this would all go airborne. On top of that, it should be noted any airborne virus can also affect your eyes. They are not requiring any kind of eye covering, so it ain't actually about keeping this out. Also, like half the fucking people that you see wearing these masks don't have their nose covered, obviously not generating any kind of effect whatsoever. If you actually like were trying to stop yourself from this kind of stuff, you would need like a legitimate fucking virology lab kind of mask. So this stuff like they say stopping the spread and stuff like this, you shouldn't be like breathing directly on people anyways. Realistically, it's just kind of rude. But nevertheless, like this stuff doesn't stop anything like that. Literally on the masks that most people are wearing, they're like they bought a little box of them, this little blue thing, right? Has the little things go around your ear, just made out
Yeah,
of little
yeah.
white cord. Literally says on the box, does not protect against the fucking transference of COVID-19. Literally says it on the box. Yet people wear this and realize that thing's better than an old T-shirt. That thing's better than a bandana. That thing's
Right.
better than a whole lot of things, but it still ain't doing nothing with that because the size of a virus is significantly smaller than even those holes. On top of that, other viruses and bacteria that exist. If you know anything, especially about bacteria, which if you even own like a house, you definitely do because you know where mold grows. And mold grows in places that are effectively, it grows best in places that are warm and damp. And so when you put some type of mask in front of your face, you're breathing in and out of it all the time. You got 98.6-degree breath coming onto it, and it's damp with air vapor, the vapor that it's supposed to be stopping, that it's not actually stopping. And this is then sitting on the front of your face. And while this might protect something from coming straight in, realize it ain't big enough to actually stop something from getting through it. And you're creating a prime breeding ground for this kind of stuff. On top of that, even inside of basically like well, where they would be doing surgery or a hospital, right? So when they utilize these kinds of masks, one of the primary things with that is that you do not adjust the mask at all while you are working. In fact, you never actually allow your hands to touch anywhere other than the surgical area. It's all part of basically the process of cleaning your hands, gloving up, preparing for surgery, and any type of place where you're actually trying to stay clean and stay free of that stuff. You want to not ever touch your face. It has been shown, and you could probably extrapolate just for yourself, that the standard person utilizing one of these masks actually touches their face significantly more than you normally would. So there's a multitude of reasons why this is ridiculous. Okay? Now, if you feel as though the worthwhile thing is that it is compassionate to other people, that it shows respect to them because it's what they would like. Now, these are reasons that I could probably be convinced to get on board with. I'm a revolutionary protester myself. I just flat out won't wear one because I'm more about the protests than I am about showing compassion and how much I care about other people. I think the rest
Mm.
of my entire life shows that. So I'm pretty good on my level of doing that. And when it comes to something like this, I think the symbolism speaks for something a lot more than that compassion and care and worth. That's my own personal opinion. It should always be your own personal opinion that does this, but I realize that there's a lot of media out there that presents this idea that this is some type of beneficial thing that you're doing for society. In fact, in certain situations, I've even seen where people are like sitting on a high horse because they're telling people to wear a mask, whether it be like a greeter or just somebody on social media or whatever. And this is really quite ridiculous. If you take the time to actually research these kinds of things, it's got a lot of downsides too. Whole lot of downsides.
Yeah.
So, and also on top of that, it's not legal for them to push this kind of thing. Also on top of that, very easy to skirt around that law. You just claim that you have a medical condition, they're not allowed to ask about it. So, like, it doesn't matter. It's so easy to get around this thing if you want to. If you choose to wear a mask, by all means, do whatever you want. You know what I mean? Hopefully, you get one that's funny and there's something like that going on at
Yeah.
least. Like,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I've seen like a couple like that I actually thought they were funny. I don't remember what they were off the top of
Yeah.
my head. And like in a certain way, like I guess I kind of can understand that. If it was like this was not going on and some dude was walking around with a mask on that like made it look like a monster face or something like that, that would be I would laugh at it, right? In this
Yeah.
moment, I'm like, oh, wearing a mask because the COVID thing, maybe,
Right.
right? But
Right.
like
Right. Right.
objectively speaking, I would think it is funny. So like,
Yeah.
I still understand the funny stuff in it, and Don's saying here, that basically what she's saying right here with the H1N1 masks years ago were put on people with H1N1, not everybody else. Like it doesn't make sense for every single person to wear a mask. They're pushing this idea that like asymptomatic spread and all kinds of things like that. Please take into account that we always had a flu going around that was airborne that got people sick. This has always been a thing. Like if you're fucking like me, you're 37 years old and shit, like 35 years of your life, the flu was everywhere, every year. Some people were even vaccinating themselves against it. You weren't going around wearing a mask. This thing, whatever it is not any more detrimental than the standard flu. All of the numbers agree with that. Shit, even if you look to the right data, the CDC, the WHO, the NIH, all of them agree with the fact that it actually hasn't put up those same kinds of numbers. And we've probably been inflating the data. So that's a whole nother side to it. But even with the inflated data, really doesn't matter. Still, still no more dangerous than the standard flu. So like ask yourself why suddenly you would feel any type of rise that like you need to do this, right? Like your
Yeah.
body is built to deal with things like this. It actually has a thing called an immune system that when it's capable of experiencing things, it learns how to deal with them, creates antibodies, right?
Weren't
Like,
well, didn't Fauci for the WHO official release or CDC something about 80% of people experiencing spontaneous healing from the COVID and shit? Basically, your immune system is kicking in, but
I
it's
did not see that
spontaneous
one,
healing. I think I
but
didn't
that's
look into it.
funny.
I didn't know if it was satire or whatever, which is hard. 'Cause some of them
Hmm.
were satire recently, but I thought that was an article. I didn't click on it, but I saw it, so thought it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I love this from Jacob. He says, so I went to a
Yeah.
class for work about COVID related things, all the info provided by the CDC. at the end of it, I learned that they really don't know shit, and anything you do is pretty much futile. LOL. That's pretty much the gist of it. If you've taken a hazardous materials class, or you've taken any types of these like virology things or anything like that, or is anything like mandated by work that's talking about the control of hazardous materials or other things that are in the air that you want to protect yourself from, you know that
Yeah.
realistically the stuff that they're mandating you to do doesn't do shit. You can literally go to the store and buy a roll of gauze, cut that gauze off in a single square, and then like tape it on your face, and that would technically pass their requirements, despite the fact that the gauze would like literally have holes in it that were, this big.
Yeah.
Like you can see
Dude, like,
literally through
okay,
the
so
thing.
we near neoprene face masks with like special filters for doing soot and boiler cleanings.
Uh-huh.
Even then, you get soot all around your cheeks, and then if you wear any regular mask or N95 mask, you get all that soot down, and you still get in your
Oh yeah.
nose hairs. You blow your nose, it's all in your soot, and that's soot. And viruses
Yeah.
are way smaller. That's
Way
soot, and we have to use
smaller.
these special masks.
Like one 10,000th of the size, like so much smaller. It's crazy. This is why
Yeah,
it's like ridiculous. There's a meme going around that basically like here's the mask that they tell you to wear, and here's the mask that you would need to wear to actually protect yourself from COVID.
right.
And it's like literally like a full headgear mask, built-in
Yeah, protect your
respirator.
eyes
You
and your
can
face,
tell that
all of
it
it. Yep,
actually like has like an O2 pump into it and shit. Like that's what you would actually need for that situation. So
right.
take a second to ask yourself, why the fuck do they want us to cover our mouths up with all this dumb shit? Like,
And
what
again,
kind of
like
sense does that make?
there really are ways that you can do actual ozone machines. You're not supposed to be in there when it's running. You don't want to breathe it in, but it will neutralize all viruses, bacteria, all that stuff in the air. So they've
Ultraviolet
spoken
light.
that sage, ultraviolet light, also sage smoke and different things. They've shown are antiviral,
How do you think they
antibacterial.
clean
There's
hospital rooms?
reasons.
They
Right.
literally have robots now that go into hospital rooms that have been occupied, and they like slowly go around the room with it's a really bright ultraviolet lamp, and that's basically
Uh-huh.
how they do the final disinfect on all hospital rooms, because
So we
UV
do
light
we
is way better at killing viruses and bacteria than anything else.
So we do, and probably for the sake of how that works, we don't have to name anything. But we do a lot of biomeds around city of Seattle, and so they
Mm-hmm.
have different protocols and different filtration systems. I think one of them is one of the biggest filtrations because it's like sanctioned by the CDC or the local CDC is that dynamic or whatever. So it's like the highest filtration system in the country or in the world, one of them. But in their loading bays and stuff, they have UV lights just for
Mm.
all around
Yeah,
is one of the things they do, and they do it through
it's
their air
surprising how good it
filtration
is.
systems also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. There's so much technology that works so good that really just like standard person doesn't really know about because it's not like mass
Mm-hmm.
produced, mass talked about, etc. But at the end of the day, like it turns out that spraying caustic chemicals all over your eating surfaces and all over your entire house and rubbing your body down with bleach ain't actually the best thing for you. You know, there's a lot to be said for purposely building your immune system. I understand that I'm a middle-aged male. I shouldn't get sick that often, but you can ask anybody that knows me. Like, I don't not get sick that often. I don't get fucking sick. Like, period. Everybody else around me
Mm-hmm.
can die, and I'll be like, my sinus is a little stuffed today. And then it's
Right.
fucking gone like an hour later. Like, I do not get sick. And it's not because I'm on some super diet or something like that. It's not because of any of these things. It's because, like, I've lived my whole life, like, building my immune system, not super worrying about the fact that, like, oh my God, there's germs on the planet. There is germs on the planet. You're not going to get away from them. If you did get away from them, you would die. Most bacteria is actually beneficial to your body in a lot of ways. So there's actually only a small subset of bacteria that kills you, as you know from like plants, for instance. Most plants are not poisonous, but some plants are poisonous, right? Like, but it's just a
Right.
small subset. Yeah? Same thing. So, use your discernment. Ask yourself what you really want to be doing with your life. Maybe you want to be wearing a mask. By all means, please get a funny one so we have something to laugh about. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe
Yeah.
you don't want to get hassled while you do that. Well, now you have a way to just get out of that. It's very
Yeah.
simple.
Just
I'm
super
sorry,
appreciate.
I have a medical condition that prohibits me from wearing a mask. Have a nice day. And then just walk right past them. And if they say anything else to you, be like, I'm sorry, I'm feeling harassed. That's all you
Yeah.
gotta do. And they'll be like, whoa, 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 it ain't like that. And you're like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
So
Dude, perfect. I really, really appreciate the that info, Zach. That helps a lot to distill down just like, yeah, for that to put that into a subroutine process. So when we're into those situations, knowing ahead of time when I am or am not wearing a mask, what I'll encounter and how I respond to it. That's
Yeah.
very helpful.
And realize so to go on a stick on the topic, you're welcome. But on the topic that I was really talking
Thanks.
about, realize like now there's no reason to sit around and argue with somebody about a mask, right?
Yeah,
Like don't waste your time doing that. That's not beneficial
yeah,
for your life
yeah.
or their life or anything. They tell you you need to wear a mask. You say they tell you some bullshit. You tell them some bullshit. Both of you go on with your own day. Okay?
Yep,
It works out perfect.
perfect.
Like it's stupid and it's a waste of time, but it is
Hmm.
a waste of time that
You know
has
what that
basically
is?
been
You just
installed in society
Zach,
at this
Zach,
point in
you
time.
just figured out for truthers how to have a normal conversation with normal people when everything doesn't have to turn to a truther issue, right? So like it used
Yeah.
to be like when people say, "How are you doing today?" Fine. You can say fine. It's all right. It's bullshit. You're thinking
Yeah.
about all this other shit. You're pissed off about whatever, whatever. But you say you're fine. You learn to interact and they go, "Okay, great," and they treat you normal and whatever. With
Yeah.
masks now, you learn I have a pre-existing medical condition. Then that's it. It neutralizes it. You don't have to go, well, actually,
Yeah.
mask, blah 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 blah
Smile.
blah. Yeah, it's just like it's cool, man. Bullshit, bullshit, and you can go on through your day. You don't have to fucking like address every
Realize
conversation with the fucking
it
mask
will
conversation.
increase the likelihood that you don't get fucked with if when they say this to you, you respond to it like you've done this a bunch of times and it's
Yeah,
always gone really well. Because they'll just be like,
right.
okay, they're an old hand
So
at this, or
start
whatever.
there, but also just practice it. The more you do it two, three, four times, it will be. If you've done it a bunch of times, it'll be very natural. So you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Just practice it. You're gonna have plenty of opportunity now. At least if you're in Washington, man,
Yeah,
plenty of
well, I mean,
opportunity.
California's got it too. I think Texas, actually, I think Texas said something about it. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
See, Texas. If I lived in Texas, though, I wouldn't really worry about that shit being enforced so much. But it's
Perhaps.
Washington, bro.
Yeah.
It's California, bro.
Yeah. I mean, even
But
still,
whatever.
like it's
I
funny.
know how to
Like
get out of it now. It's all good.
the primary place that I actually go into is this Mexican restaurant. They don't care at all. Like no one's
Yeah.
ever said anything to me about it in
And
there.
they're just super happy. I think that they have customers there, like those restaurants and stuff. They don't give a fuck,
Yeah,
But
perhaps.
yeah,
Walmart,
other ones though.
places like that. That's the place that'll get you for sure. You know what I mean? They got
Yeah,
some troll
the
out there in
government.
front of us. Ah.
I know it. The government buildings I've been in recently, in county buildings or whatnot, different ones, they have their own restrictions, and it's kind of like local electrical laws and whatever. So there's Washington state laws, electrical laws, Washington state mandate for the mask. But what they even say in that breakdown is that they defer to the more strict laws of the local counties and governments, which that's fine. The local counties should have jurisdiction over like electrical laws that don't necessarily apply in Eastern Washington, definitely apply in Western Washington, vice versa, moisture, all kind of shit. So there's ways to adapt, but it's just an additional nuance. Like in the county buildings, stuff far more. So you had to have a mask on the entire building, or you couldn't get let in, even to do my job. I'm there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do these boilers, and I'm out. But
Mhm.
like so I wear it while I'm in there. Which for me is fine. I'm doing my job. I would take it off when I'm out. I take it off when I'm in the boiler room. It's literally just the common areas. It just kind of is the nature
Yeah.
of what I'm doing right now.
Well,
So it's
there's
just
something to
interesting.
be said for fucking not making waves for no fucking reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, being as I am a bit of a revolutionary kind of individual, a bit of a protester, even still, like, if I gotta make a bunch of fucking waves just to make a stand about some ideology so that I can go into like some store to buy a package of Jello, like I'm just gonna go in and get the package of Jello. Like, why? Why start some big old huge fight about something? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? There's really like no reason to do that. You have to always look at anything you choose to do in your life and make sure that you're actually getting something that you want out of it, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not worth it if it's not giving you a return that is something that you want. You know, if you don't care
Yeah.
about the mask one way or the other, just put the fucking thing on when you go inside of places, grab your shit, get out, don't think about it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We start making this huge ass deal about this. Realize right now, if nothing else that I've ever recognized from, I don't know, people could make all their arguments about what's really going on in government right now. The conspiracy theories of the world are all over the map. One thing they've always been doing and are definitely doing right now is providing plenty of opportunities for people to be divided against one another. And like we don't need to take these opportunities. Mask, no mask, who gives a fuck, really? Like, would you dislike me more than you already do dislike me if I didn't wear a mask or did wear a mask? Does it really
Kevin
matter to
might
you?
hold on. Kevin might because Kevin in the comments. I remember when I was in the Chaz, like they were in the comments. Aaron better not be fucking wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And I happen to not be, but I have my scarf around me. That's that way too. Again, I'm going to a restaurant or I don't know something, whatever. It's fine. I don't care. I want
Yeah.
to get my food. That's the way it is right now.
A lot of
It's
these
just funny,
mandates too, it's just like total bullshit too. I mean, you can use
right?
like fucking anything. Like I was saying with the gauze, like you can use anything. So
Yeah,
you could like, there's so many ways to basically skirt around this bullshit. I urge everyone to not really just like buy into it too deep. If you don't like it, use one of the methods to skirt around it. If you don't
yeah.
care, just
The
don't
bullshit
make
exchange.
waves. You know what I mean? If it is a big ass fucking deal to you and you want to like yell at somebody about how they have to fucking do it, well go fucking do it somewhere else because we don't want to fucking hear it here. So like literally just get out of here. I don't need to hear your opinion about how worthwhile the mask is. So like actually literally like if you strongly support them and want to argue with me about this, just unsubscribe from the channel immediately. Like it's not there's no reason to have these kinds of conversations. You know what I mean?
And if you hold that opinion, you're still welcome here for other reasons, but just try not to spam engage in it because it's not going to produce any benefit.
Sure.
In my
I
opinion.
You're always yeah, everybody's always welcome here, but at the
Yeah.
same time, don't come around arguing and shit. I
But if
don't
you're
think anybody
open-minded,
should sit in
like,
here being all fucking like soapboxed about how you shouldn't wear a mask. I'm not sitting here soapboxing about how you shouldn't. I'm providing you options. That's it.
there you go.
Options. You want to wear a mask? You do not want to wear a
Circumambulated
mask?
options.
You want to fucking bullshit around it? You want to tell the truth? Whatever you want to
Really,
do.
like,
It's
think
all
about
there.
that. Whatever we encounter as the world gets crazier, if it's as it seems to be. I mean, there's a lot of repercussions from the economy being shut down the way it was in businesses, and who knows how it's all going to play out and how it's will progress, and the fear porn and October surprise and politics and all that. But like, it's being. Sorry, go ahead. Sounds like we want to jump on that.
Jasmine just saying that she saw someone make a mask with a grocery bag and another one made out of
Oh
a
my
Bounty
God.
paper towel with rubber bands. It's such a joke.
Nice.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's a total joke.
Yeah.
You realize like the people, it's the people that are basically enforcing this. The people do
Yeah.
not know the laws or their rights or anybody else's rights at all. And so like they're like you got to have something covering your mouth. Like it can be anything. Literally
Right.
anything. It's so stupid. So, yeah.
Okay, so think where you said about
A
providing
Swiffer
options. So like,
sheet. Saw that too. A
right.
Swiffer sheet though. That's
All those
ridiculous, man.
chemicals, bro, makes everything smell great.
Oh
All
God.
right, so like it's a circumambulating perspective. So as the world gets crazier, and I guess now we're just kind of doing a podcast thing and sharing our opinions as we're going in it. I'm in the chaz and like, shit's going on. So the more options we can find of how to respond to situations. So like Jacob said, the bullshit exchange is fucking great, man, really. So you can go
Yeah.
on with your day. Right, that understanding your rights. So if you are getting harassed, the way to neutralize that in a way it's not confrontational. Like I have a medical condition that prohibits me from wearing a mask. No big deal. And a lot of times people are like if you have a pet in there, they can be judgy. Oh, it's an emotional support animal. Some people are judgy about that, or like it's an actual
Also
health
illegal
dog.
for them to ask why
It
your
is.
dog is a
I
support
know.
animal.
Trust me. I had a little dog for years that we brought in everywhere, and she was adorable. So nobody cared, and she was like 8.5 pounds, like a little dog, right? But the same thing, we knew nobody could ask, and so that was the answer we gave sometimes. And then on air flight, we got that from approved, like from a doctor or whatever. We had to get a doctor's note, and she rode for free on the plane with us. It was great. But
Hmm.
really, so there are limits, and culturally, a lot of people back off, man. They're like, oh, okay, like no big deal. And if they push, then you have another step, right, of feeling harassed. And if somebody's able to film or whatever, really, so there's ways like to even pre-escalate it.
Yeah.
And if it escalates, you know your rights, you know how to respond to that. So know that ahead of time is incredibly helpful because then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. You know, if you run into that, that's how you're going to respond.
Hmm.
It's good.
Yeah. And then I have it somewhere. It's at least on my phone. Somebody made a little very like professional and legal looking card that looks and I don't know whether the information on it is real or not actually, but I know that like the statute that is claiming is real, but it's basically like a card exempting you from wearing a face mask and claiming these things that like I'm talking about. So if you feel like you need another layer of protection with that, reach out to me. So whatever, there's tons of social media stuff below, or whatever. Message me on Facebook, something, and I can get you this image that you can just keep on your phone, and you could also utilize that. It make you look even more legit. It's not really. It doesn't not matter whether the card is real because the claims on it are actually real, And not usually when you talk to somebody about it, you're going to be talking to a random person that like works at a store, and they are not in a position where they can risk even potentially having like $150,000 lawsuit coming at their ass. So they're going to buckle to that immediately. And that's what I'm really talking about here, is that like realizing that like a lot of the ways that in reality we act like we're forced into doing one thing or another, there really is usually ways for us to choose to just kind of make our own way. I'm literally living proof of this. I've been doing it for the last 15 years of my life, basically all the time. So you really, if you take the time to look for how can I actually do what I want to do, rather than going, oh, okay, I ain't supposed to do it, and then you just shut it down, you can find you can do most anything that you want within, rational. Don't get so crazy, you know what I mean? Like, but you with rational amounts of that. So, nevertheless, just make sure that when you're engaging in situations, so here's the thing that I do with clients. Okay, we basically go through a process of establishing like who they are in their dreams, right? Like who they really want to be, say 10 years down the road, right? And then we go through a whole bunch of various different steps to generate, even down on like paper and such, a really good idea of who that person is, how they make their decisions, what's important to them, etc. And then we do a process of meditations that I've sculpted that really gets them like kind of connected and entangled with that version of themselves. And then the goal after that, moving forward in like functional life, is to, when you're going to make a decision about like what you're going to spend your time on, you don't make your decision as you today. You make your decision as you in the future that we've sculpted. And the idea is that you in the future is literally just a sum of its parts. So it is the things that it does during the day, basically. So if we can sculpt out exactly what that person does, and you can start acting as that person today, you will find that that future is a hell of a lot closer than it was when we mapped it out. Say we say 10 years in the future, very possible to obtain this instead in 2 years, because you're really assertively changing the way that you're operating on virtually every level, because you're making decisions as though you're a completely different person. I'm not Zach today, I'm Zach 10 years in the future. Zach 10 years in the future accomplished everything that I could possibly think of right now that I wanted to do over the next 6 months. So then there was 9.5 years after of that of stuff after that that he also
Mm.
accomplished, and so his time is more valuable. His him getting stuff done is more important to him. He's more in line with things that he wants to do, so on and so forth. And to the best of our ability, we try to act as that person in the moment after we've gone through this process of basically sculpting this individual. This shit works wonders. It's basically all based off of an old archaic study called eschatology, which is the idea of that not we in the modern world, we basically approach time as though we're being pushed by the past into this unknown future. The idea of eschatology was kind of to take the flip side of that, and really just the idea that maybe we're being pulled from the future into the future, right? Like it's pulling us in
Mm.
rather than absorbing us, and we're not being pushed from the past, but like pulled away from the past. This is based off
Mm.
of basically that idea, creating a purposeful future that you're going to then use the facets of it to attract you into that. And it very much so works. There's a reason why high society studied this all the way up until the mid 1700s, when a whole lot of various different things, which can pique a whole lot of weird curiosities, suddenly
Hmm.
kind of fell out of well, they were no longer taught inside of anything that was an even remotely public school. These are things like the idea of ciphering, things like the idea of eschatology, astrology, things like this. Those used to be taught in places like Oxford University. Those are not taught at Oxford anymore, and have not been since the mid 1700s. There's a reason for that, ladies and gentlemen. There is a serious reason for that. But since it's 53 minutes into the show, if you want to find out what those reasons are, you're going to need to tune into Expanded Understanding some more in the future, where we talk about things like eschatology, astrology, the mid
Mm.
1700s, and how the world changed, then how we're changing right out of that, how we're aligned with exactly that time right now. We talk about all kinds of these things all the time. So if this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, notifications, turn them on, follow the other media channels. We got stuff coming up all over the place. I have enough ideas to fill the internet. So we'll see whether or not I have enough time to deploy any of those.
On the idea of pulling us into the future, that whole concept. So I think of like one of the pictures that I drew out one time or made sense to me. So there's timelines that are already in place. So if we're in a moment of time, but it's based off of actions that have already happened, realities that already exist into the future, if you will. That's so perception. But we're in this internal singular where we have to circumambulate from a single point or single vessel, if you will, single avatar or something for the most part. Um, and so it's past decisions we're aware of, but we already know that we can change the past through neurology. We already know we can go into a neuroplastic state. Every memory you've ever had is only as old as the last time you remembered it, and
Mm-hmm.
brought it to memory to mind. So we can change the past that way. Why can't we also change the future? Even doing vision boards and different things to actually anchor in the realities of the future you as much as you can idolize that, if you will, and then pull those habits of the future to your present, and it collapses that timeline that much faster. It's a
Mm-hmm.
reality that is already there, but you're coming into alignment with your actions now, not just when this day comes. And that's why vision boards and different things to trigger subconscious symbols or sigils, creating your own symbols and sigils and feeling states of being in your body now, feeling that life you want to live, that future you now, and then drawing out those symbols or sigils even with your eyes closed or whatever, and even having them around on your mirror or whatever. You forget over time consciously what that was about, but you subconsciously, that feeling state's a resonance, a tuning fork that you're putting from your future into your present, so
Absolutely.
that the more from your future you actually, more tuning forks from your future you put into your present, the quicker, if you will, the more I don't know, maybe quicker is the right word. I don't know if it's not about time in a sense, right? But the more coherent you'll become with your future now.
Yeah. I think of it as like drawing a light into focus, you know? And the more things that you add that are focusing on that, that's like the more it's becoming the whole of the focus, you know? And so you very much so what you're saying, you know, like we align with it and it seems that we get there more effectively, which sometimes looks like quicker, sometimes looks like it's just more available, like windows
More
of
effectively.
opportunity are more
Mm,
available. It looks a lot of different ways. But
mm,
if you take all of the windows of opportunity, it will inevitably be quicker than the way that people normally move into a future version of themselves, which is
mm.
like this like stack. It's not good. It's not good. It's very not good in
It's
comparison.
like it feels like on some level trying to get all the circuitry right in a computer, right? If this vessel is the computer on some level, this DNA technology skin suit, if I can get the right protein antenna receptors up, right, by focusing on the right things or pulling the right things from my future, for whatever that is for me, and infinitely
Hmm.
subjective to each and every person, that it'll create the circuitry that allows the energy that already is me, that's projecting here, that is all around me, that is ever present, that this vessel inhabits a good portion of, or a present, like cognitive, egoic avatar portion of.
Hmm.
Um, the more, I don't know, I guess that would be coherence, I feel like, right? Connecting the overlapping spheres, like connecting the dots, creating
Yeah.
the pathways within self to experience more of yourself and the
Yeah.
future that you desire or have in your eidolon.
Yeah, well, one could consider the ideal version of themselves being this like really complex circuitry that spans between here and the next second, you know, and like
Hmm.
that's just this present forward flowing moment of their ideal state. You could understand this as like a bunch of circuitry or like a bunch of interconnected nodes that there's so many metaphors that you could do. I definitely like the
Yeah.
computer one. I mean, like my first whole foray into psychology was completely how's the brain exactly like a computer. That was like my first 6 years with
Right.
psychology was just that all the time. So, and it's
What do you,
solid.
so how would you fit, how, yeah, no doubt. How would you fit in the liquid nitrogen on the CPU into this dynamic that we're talking about right now? Would that metaphor crossover?
Okay, so we're talking about basically the idea of additional cooling for a
Mm,
processor in that case. And so like the idea of a fan on so the processor is like the brain churning thoughts, right? Like logical
mm,
connection being made with readily available memories, which are oftentimes considered present experiences. So,
mm.
nevertheless,
Would that be the
it's
RAM? Readily
Sort
available
of.
memories.
There is a
Actually,
process there. That's why
no
I call it
doubt.
readily available memories.
Well
But
done, sir.
nevertheless, there is a crossover there. That's not all the RAM is. You could definitely understand RAM as the short-term memory as well, but you could also kind of
Mhm.
say that this stuff's all held in short-term memory. Nevertheless,
Really,
the
like
with the
readily available.
processor,
Very good.
we have the standard for processor cooling is to have a fan on it, right? And if we're
Yeah.
going beyond that, then we start doing other types of cooling, whether it be like water cooling or some kind of, basically,
Hmm.
it's always some kind of fluid. Water cooling's next best. Arguably, the next best after that would actually having the thing submerged in oil. And the next best after that
Hmm.
would be like liquid nitrogen. These are all basically like ways that we relax the mind and allow it to do
Mm.
things more effectively while it's still crunching those numbers or whatever. For me personally, for instance, music really helps me to think more effectively for longer. So I can crunch like more CPU cycles in the same
Mm.
amount of time without the processor becoming overloaded if I'm using
Totally.
music. So music is kind of like a fan. So now liquid nitrogen, I would equate that to like so when they do iboga flooding, they
Uh-huh.
fucking one of the common ways of doing that is then to have the person when the iboga has become too much and their brain is very overwhelmed and it's become a very difficult time, they give them like a 200 milligram dose of NNDMT, and this like
Wow.
slams them into the nothingness basically, and that like gets them out of the aboga experience and basically completely like cools them down and resets them when they land back from the DMT. It's just like any other time that you land back from DMT until the iboga comes back on again, right? But this gives like this
Interesting.
super fast impulse reset that really just brings the mind down massively. You could call something like that like the liquid nitrogen of cooling the processor off, basically.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of ways for this. Like, I mean, you could argue that, well, there was a concept that kind of went away for, well, people don't talk about it a lot. It was just a release mechanism that was called primal screaming. It was talked about a lot in the 90s. And
Right.
nevertheless,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
can work very, very, very good. Like if shit is just getting too heavy, just like screaming at the top of your lungs can really do something to like calm down the physiology and the brain and everything. There's that huge release of energy. And you can think of
Yeah.
this as basically like a blow off valve or something like that, where you're basically releasing this pressure. So functionally though, all types of cooling the processor have to do with things that basically allow the brain to go for longer or cool down functionally. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense too, because with the primal screaming, I remember doing that once at a point in life. I remember hearing about that and just giving part of it's giving yourself permission. I think if a
Yep.
lot of people never grow up doing that, or it's just very foreign to your experience of, if you didn't grow up doing maybe, I don't know, maybe in certain daycares or drama classes or kids classes, you learn to do that, but maybe you didn't or whatever. So giving yourself permission to, and it also in your myofascial tissue, the vibratory scream through your vocal cords in your body shaking, or you're raging or slamming the steering wheel. I mean, you can beat the hell out of a lot of the steering wheels. I've never busted a steering wheel before. I went down it once or twice, but like they're pretty solid, right? So you can hit them pretty hard. But
Buddy, when
like
I was younger, used
just,
to go berserker on his fucking steering wheel, and it was actually like all bent in several places. Like
oh
he had
shit.
actually bent it and shit. It was crazy. He went berserker on it. It
All right, I
was
take that
crazy.
back. I have never
It's
done that,
it's
but
very
apparently it can be
hard to
done.
bend them, okay? I'm not saying that you are going to have success. I'm
Wow.
saying what the fuck? Like I remember the
Yeah,
first day
I'm.
I ever got in his car and I saw that his steering wheel like legit had like a bend in it. Like this in part of it. You could see that it had
Uh-huh.
like gotten bent back more, but someone like tried to fix it, but it was
Yeah,
still like stuck bent. Like I was just like, you're fucking crazy, Justin. Like
dude.
Jesus, man.
And I'm 6'6", and that's never happened to me. So I don't know. Yeah, that guy, that's some shit. And I wailed on that thing. So, but even doing in that, you're giving place to for demonic
Justin is
sounds. You
like the
feel lesser.
opposite of you, but also the same. It's pretty weird.
Way opposite of me in what way? But also same, or same what way? Because 6'2" or what? Or you slam
Well,
steering
no,
wheels.
no, in the sense that you guys are both like impractical and fun. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But he had like super repressed rage, and you don't have that same rage thing. Like he was
All
he
right.
was super duper
Yeah, yeah, makes
fun all
sense.
the way up until like suddenly he was in somebody's face and then just like jumping on top of them and punching them repeatedly, and it was like, whoa, how'd that happen? But
Whoa.
if you knew him, you knew that he had enormous amounts of repressed rage all the time. So he was always about zero point 0.3 milliseconds away from fucking murdering somebody basically. So
Nope, been around too many people now in my life. No more of that shit. Sorry. Not for
yeah,
me.
it was about like 20 years old. I couldn't really do it anymore, and I kept on talking to him until about like 28. And then at
Uh,
28, it was like, man, I just can't do it anymore. I woke
I
up one
know it.
morning, I was staying at his house while I was like traveling through the Tri-Cities, and I woke up one morning with like my girlfriend like crying over the top of me, and I was like, what
Uh-huh.
the hell happened? And she's basically crying hysterically because Justin had like freaked out on her massively because she didn't like clean up the kitchen or something, but like it was
Yikes.
completely his mess in the kitchen. Like none of it was
Yikes.
ours. We had not used any dishes at all, and he had gone
Oh
fucking
man.
berserker on her. And I just was like, all right, just get your stuff. You know what I mean? And I just
Yeah.
had her grab her stuff, and like I was just like, all right, Justin, I'm never talking to you again. Have a
Yeah.
good life, dude. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
This is the straw that
That's
breaks the
too much.
camel's
That's
back.
it.
So,
It's true, man. It's
nevertheless,
funny.
I would like to use my
Good.
space on a podcast to say that I really do hope that Justin Olson is having a fantastic life because I really do love Justin Olson. He was there for me in a way that
Hmm.
other people would never have been there for me, and I really do
Hmm.
appreciate the relationship that we got to have. There was just a point in time in my life where like I was trying to do something different and that wasn't gonna fit. So,
Yeah, totally, man. That's beautiful. Yeah, and that's like it's funny too. Like we learn to ride out those relationships in our life. And they're not necessarily bad for us. We found a way that it's fine for us. Like we can interact with that person. It's like it's fine in our interaction with them. We engage them the way we want to. We tolerate the things we tolerate. It's fine. May not be great for their partner, right?
sure.
And it's like or whatever, but or it's not great for us at a certain time when like then they do something to our partner. Like okay, I guess all right, it was fine with me, but now it's time. You got to go, bro.
Yeah.
For now, whatever. I hope to see you
Yeah.
later. I don't hate you.
He
It's just like
was
yeah, it's not gonna
already
work right
on
now.
thin ice, anyways. He had done a bunch of ridiculous shit to me. But we'll have to save that for the future. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Tune back in the future for weird
Yeah.
stories about early post Elizabethan era England and how that affects the world today. And weird stories
Yeah.
about Justin Olson acting like a velociraptor running down people's halls. There's all kinds of weird stuff here. You never know what you're going to get. So
So,
I love
and on
all of
that
you.
note, I'll trail off with you, and we'll just call this a nice another condensed hour-long night. We've got another show tomorrow night, and then we are going to enter a new schedule here. We're not going to go every single night. We're going to take Sunday to take a break for the suns to get in the sun or some other shit like that. SUN because it applies to everyone, and it's just a thing. But
Yeah.
we're going to do Frank's show tomorrow night. We're going to port that into our show as long as that goes. We'll do a show after that, so we'll have that whole community dynamic. We're looking forward to that.
Yeet.
And there's more to come. And the last thing I want to say, and what I was saying before, just to finish that off, so the myofascial release in your body to embody those demonic rages or animalistic things allows us to find a resonance, like a tuning fork, with those things, the anxieties, the pain, the anger, and to even allow it to be out, to actually be processed, grounded, if you will, if you want to call that,
Yeah.
with a physical way of doing it, not just meditatively or cognitively, but to actually ground out those energies out of your body to give
Yeah.
place for them. So,
Yeah,
yep.
one of the biggest problems with trauma, rough emotions, etc., is actually just the repression of it. You know, you got to
Yep.
have some way to let it out, and you know, well, my mom always told me just always make sure to let it out down rather than like out, like horizontal,
Mm,
right? Focus it down,
yeah,
and
yeah.
this is you know, what one part spirituality, one part witchcraft, really on that one. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, you know, you just realize like you do need to get it out. It's very beneficial. And yeah, so
Yeah.
love you guys. Hope you have a
Love you
wonderful
guys very
night. We'll
much.
see you back tomorrow.
Yep.
Frank's show starts at 6 o'clock on his
Yep.
channel, and then we
Frankie
will be
Fearless
on
on YouTube.
after him. And we'll catch you
Mhm.
all then. Have a good night.